whenever you are laying down there in the bed and saying like, oh my God, like the clock is ticking and I have less and less time to sleep. I will have a very, very bad sleep for me. That you will get it. So like you first of all, your body will fall asleep at some point. And okay, maybe now this night is not the night. Maybe you will have it the next night, but actually you just need to accept the situation and you will know that you will at some point get some sleep. So that's like, and this acceptance is quite important and in understanding how your body works. So it's not that it will be like this forever. When you're really tired, you will sleep.
All right. Well, we're here with Anna Smirnova. So thanks so much for joining us. Really excited to have you on. I know you're in a different part of the world. We got a 12-hour difference between us, but it's definitely going to be good for our audience out there to get some good education and kind of dive into nutrition, everything you have going on. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I thought, we kind of start a little bit with how did you get into the field of nutrition and just, we'll unpack it a little bit more, but you have a very,
Mhm.
some specific areas you like to focus on. I'm just curious, I always just really enjoy hearing people's stories. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So my name is Anna, and I'm Russian. Born and raised in Moscow, and I, as long as I remember myself, I wanted to be an architect, and that's what I did. I actually started architecture, started it at the age of 14, so very early. Continued then my education in France, also in architecture, and then moved directly working within this field. And I always wanted to do retail architecture, and that's what I did. And then I got married, we moved to Switzerland, and I joined a big luxury company, also doing retail architecture. And my career kind of skyrocketed. I started as an intern, and within 2 years, I already had a team of my own and leading a department, doing boutiques and stores worldwide. So it was perfect. It was crazy. It was great. But then it's corporate and then the world of today, and we know how the crisis is going, and retail is not doing so well at the moment. And so it's all started with like big fires, travels, we had festivals, we had everything, and then somehow, it decreased a little bit, little by little. And in the meantime, I also got pregnant. I had a baby, and this was a very life-changing experience for me.
Sure.
I think for everyone it is. And for me, it was on the psychological level, on the physical level as well. So the body changes, the hormones, like everything, you name it. And that's where I felt really low at the moment. Like in the beginning, I had the depression and everything. And so there, one of the points that I wanted to tackle was my body. And my mom set me up with a nutritionist, and she helped me. And actually, like, I never had a problem with nutrition before. Well, now I know that I had, but before I didn't think that, like I was living my
Sure.
life. I had like kind of the same body composition since like forever, so I could wear my jeans from when I was back 13 years old. It was all good. Okay, I could eat the entire chocolate in an evening, but who doesn't? And then it was a very stressful job. We were again traveling a lot, like many people to manage. So there was maybe a bit of alcohol, a bit of this, a bit of that, like everything, but it was okay. And then when I had a kid, and with all of this, when I started digging into the how nutrition can actually influence our lives,
Mhm.
and I was so low, and this woman, she helped me. She helped me so much. I could find my body again. I could find myself back again. And this feeling of confidence was amazing. And that's where I thought, okay, wow, that's just incredible. I have to learn more about it. I have to dig into it. Like, why did that work? And okay, now when I look back into what she actually offered me, I would never offer that to any of my clients really, because like I literally ate for I think 120 1,200 calories. So obviously I lost weight. Of course I did, but it did help me at the moment. And then I thought to myself that I would love to learn and dig into it more so
Mhm.
I can do it for myself and I can maybe establish good relationships with food, good practices for my kid so that she grows up and she already knows it from the very beginning. So it all started like this. I started it for me and for her. And I also thought, like, once I started it, that if I manage to help at least one person the way this person helped me, then,
Sure.
it's actually worth everything in the world. It's amazing because for me, it was literally a life-changing experience. And that's how it all started. I had a sprint, so I had to do like a very intensively the studies because my goal was that I have to do it by the end of my maternal leave. I had quite a break. I had 9 months. I mean, it was not obviously all paid through, but like luckily I had the support from my husband. And yeah, so now and the company accepted it as well. So corporate is actually a lot of good stuff happening in the corporate. And
Sure.
Switzerland, I guess you do not maybe have the same kind of luxury in the US, but you like that's Europe. And yeah, so like 9 months break, great. I had a sprint with nutrition and I finished. I managed to do it, literally managed like a week before I had to go back to work. And of course, I couldn't dive in like really a lot, like with the clients and helping people, but I did already start doing a few stuff. So I did a few workshops here and there. I also offered, I participated in the HR community responsible for nutrition in the company. And then how it's like all started, I was slowly growing into it. And now it's like it took me a year more or less when I realized that I would really love to do it like fully, really.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's so much more rewarding than building boutiques. Building big, it's very good, it's nice, but here I actually make a true change and I can make somebody happy, like really happy.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're kind of, the architecture of their nutrition and well-being now. You're building
Yeah.
helping build lifestyles versus these, mega structures maybe you're involved with before, so that's good stuff. So, can you just for those out there too that maybe are just getting introduced to you, can you walk through some pillars of your philosophies? Like, what are some kind of key things you do, when
Mhm.
someone's looking to, start working with you?
Yeah, so for me, what is important is that nutrition is not it's a healthy lifestyle. So
Mhm.
it's not about something complicated. It's not about math. It's not about rules and restrictions. It's really about basics. And as long as we get the basics right, this is something that you can maintain through your whole life.
Mhm.
And we tackle this little by little. So there is no extreme diets. I would never suggest that to any of my clients. I believe that the restriction is never leading anywhere. And I believe that by adding things and whole foods and we can all live long and healthy lives. So
Yeah.
that's my like main strategy. In the parallel, I also do the certification in sleep, stress, and recovery. So I address like the person holistically through whole try to at least through all areas of their lives. So nutrition is very important, but it's a part of your deep health. And I try to really tackle it all, through all the aspects.
Got it. Yeah, because I found that really interesting, as we're kind of jumping into that, the some of the recovery work that you do as well as
Mhm.
the nutrition component. Could you talk about just the importance of if we start with stress first, like stress management and some of your protocols and what that looks like?
Yeah, so sure. If we start with stress, maybe like what is the first thing that you think about when you think stress? And usually it's something negative. But
Mm,
actually, stress can be good, right? So
mhm.
stress, we need stress. We need stress to grow. Like if you think about gym, your muscle will never grow without the stress. It just stagnate and nothing will happen. So we
Sure.
need stress. But there are different kinds of stress. You can have a good stress and you have a bad stress. And what differentiates the two? The good stress is the one when you have an appropriate amount of stress that challenges you. Then you have a good recovery portion, and then you can go back to homeostasis, so to your basic level when you're in a comfort zone, okay, and then you're ready for the next stress. So there is a good portion of the recovery, which if you do not have this recovery, you are not in the position to tackle the next stress. And you need to have resources available so that like your resources are more than whatever the demands of the stress are. And funny enough, like our body also perceives it that way. So there are different systems that that activate when you have when you perceive stress as a bad stress, or if you perceive that your resources are not enough. There is an HPA axis that is activated. So you have like cortisol, you are really running like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, that's a stress level, a threat.
Sure.
Or if you perceive that you have enough resources and you can deal with the stress, then there is a positive reaction. It's like a challenge. It's like, okay, I got it. Like, okay, it's a bit challenging, but I got it. I can do it. And then you enter into it, and then that's a good thing. So basically, it's all in your mind. It's not about like the stress on its own. The same stress for one person can be perceived as a threat, or by a different person, they can say like, okay, never mind, like I do it easy like this. And it's not even a challenge, but nothing. Or for somebody else, it's a challenge. So it's all in our head. And we need to train our perception of stress. How can we build a resilience towards stress? How can we build our response to stress? And that's what we are tackling. So of course, again, recovery plays a big role into that. So more resources we have, more calm we feel, more our emotional state is solid, we handling stress better. But also we can train ourselves through different techniques to perceive stress in a calmer manner. Then it will be like, okay. And then there is a third pillar of it, is that you can also filter stress. So there is an unnecessary stress that you could avoid. Mm-hmm. And then this one, if you take it out, then you have more resources actually, so that you can deal with the stress that you cannot eliminate. Because the goal is not to eliminate all stress. We need to keep some stress, but we need to keep the actual one, and the one that we don't need to just take out. So
I
that's
appreciate.
what we attack, like 3 pillars.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's interesting because I often see different people with different levels of an ability to work through some of the stressors, as you're mentioning, being able to filter them, being able to perceive them differently and kind of reframe them. And that kind of leads me to a thought I had as you were talking through that. Would you say your program, do you focus a little bit more on more of a counseling type approach where you're guiding people on how to navigate stresses and filters and things of that nature? Is that a big part of when you're working with a client?
Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely. So we are building like the techniques. How would you address the situation, and what happened? Like, why did you react the way that you reacted, and what would happen if you were thinking or changing your perspective towards this situation, and maybe you could deal with it differently the next time the same situation arises. And usually, this like stress component or stress management, I work on it on a workshop level. So this is something that we present to the teams. I present to the teams together with the HR, of course, involved. And then we together can show how the team can tackle this, how together they can build a spirit of creating more of challenges rather than threat responses within the team. And what is this stress mentality?
So it sounds like a lot of group dynamics and interactions with other people. You're kind of helping guide them through. Do I have that right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And how do you see that supporting them as they're transitioning into making some healthy lifestyle changes and trying to improve their health? How do you see this working into that?
Stress management is extremely important because it's not only in work, it's in everything. Like your stress response, it depends on the little stress being loaded one upon the other, right? So if you have stress, a lot of stress at home, you kind of bound to bring this to your home, and then it affects your relationships at home, and affects also well, your digestion. It affects like everything, so in your hormones and how your body feels and how you sleep and like everything really. So this is all part of like the deep health and the holistic approach. And these techniques, they're not unique for the corporate environment. They can be used for anyone, and just in any situation.
Yeah, I'm curious to unpack it, take it a layer deeper, and just
Mm.
understand. If you can give an example of what is maybe a common theme you see, maybe something related to stress, and then how is that? Walk us through how you would apply, a reset for them with that.
Right. So, I mean, we can tackle the maybe the situation of a burnout, because this is something that is a lot
Yeah.
like common, quite common, unfortunately, in a corporate world, but also just in general in the work environment, right? And the burnout is like an extreme version of the stress, right? So the burnout is when we when it affects all of the areas of our life, and it's so much that we just say, okay, we don't, even if we try really really hard, we do not see the end of the tunnel here. Like that's no, that's it. So that's the difference with the stress. Like if just a regular stress situation, we believe that if we work really hard, it potentially will be okay with us. But with burnout, there is no belief. There is just nothing. We just lay there. That's it. So for this situation to avoid, like first of all, what would we tackle? Explain like the concept of the burnout. Like how does it represent? How do you see the signs of an approaching burnout? And the signs is like you have a very cynical approach to things. You're being detached. Funnily enough, your actually cortisol level is lower compared to just stressed people, because even your body is like being in a detachment mode. Like you
Mm,
do not
right.
care anymore. There are like physical signs as well, like lots of self-care. Like you do not care of not only work, but like almost nothing around you. Your relationships struggle. You also have problems with sleep again. So like you have constant pain. So like these things. So you can see this early these signs, and that's important signs. So you have to pinpoint them within your team, but you also have to pinpoint it within yourself. And there is a counter argument that would potentially help you to get out of the burnout, and this is the engagement. So that is something that you need to bring sense to what the person is doing, because the main problematic with the burnout is that like we lost sense. That's just it. There is no more sense in whatever I'm doing. And when you bring engagement and you start trying to create more activity within this person, then this would and should drag him out of this horrible, horrible hole where they found themselves in. And of course, at some point when you do not see any possibility, and you see that they're digging deeper and deeper, that's when you have to refer to appropriate medical provider, because burnout requires help, like true help. But engagement, going through engagement, identifying the signs, leading how can priorities be established, appropriate workload, when you should raise your hand, when you should say that like that's here I say no, here I filter, like I'm filtering my stress loads with this. What is important? Is this non-negotiable? Okay, then this is I do, this I don't do. So we go through this. I also very much suggest to do the lean workshops. I have some contact with the lean specialists as well, who do an assessment of your workflow in general of the whole project, identifying the areas where it's lost time where you could have avoided, and then you could shorten and optimize, and then potentially, your work is way more efficient and therefore less stressful situations. So you avoid the roundups and so on.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're really covering a lot of facets with what's going on with the individual, which is really impressive how you're looking at the holistic approach and the whole picture of their day, their work, what's going on in life, the nutrition, the recovery, the sleep, the stress management. I'm curious on the topic of burnout, do men and women kind of manifest symptoms of burnout differently? Like, could you give us maybe some common themes there? If so, and what does that look like?
So, it's pretty similar on a general level, like what I was saying before. Of course, there are a few differences in the hormonal changes potentially, because, as we said, so you have a possibility of lowered sleep quality, and lowered sleep quality, for instance, in men is shown with decrease in testosterone, and actually, apparently, according to the studies, 1 week of poor sleep can lead to up to 15% decrease in testosterone in men, which is kind of huge, I think, like after 1 week
Yeah,
only.
and really quick, just because
Yeah.
the mic cut out a little bit, so I just want to
Sorry.
reiterate. That's okay. I just want to reiterate what you said though. So it sounded like you said a decrease in sleep is drops in on average about 15% in testosterone in men. Is that was that the stat, or did I miss part of it?
Yeah, almost. So basically, 1 week of poor sleep
1 week.
for men, only 1 week, results in decrease in 15% of testosterone for men, which is, I think, massive, really, because 1 week is almost nothing.
Right. They're gonna feel that
And
for sure. They're gonna feel that. That's for sure.
yeah, they do. They do. That's what the in the studies, basically the participants, that's what they said, that like do feel that, like actually do feel that. In women, of course, it's with progesterone and estrogen, so you can feel mood swings. Your reproductive system is off place. It's basically the stress response situation. When your body is in stress, all of unnecessary functions are being shut, right? So
Right.
you are in a survival mode, and when you're in a survival mode, you don't need to you don't need to digest well, like that's not important. You don't
Right.
need to reproduce, like this is all just
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of people, I think, overthink it, where it's like, if your body thinks it's being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, that's the old analogy, right? It's not thinking of reproduction and digestion, it's just thinking of survival, so it's gonna shut
yeah.
down those sex hormones,
Mm,
and what's really tricky about that, at least in my mind, is the less of those sex hormones you have, those actually help you from a physiological standpoint manage stress, so it's like this, really evil
vicious
little
circle.
cycle. Yeah, exactly. That just keeps kind of tearing people down. So I think that's where these interventions you're talking about are so important, because it's easy to say, "Oh, I had a bad week. I had a bad 2 weeks," and it's like that could really spiral quick.
It can, and also like on the sleep topic, for instance, melatonin. Uh, Probably if you're not getting enough sleep, your melatonin production is also being disrupted.
Right.
So it's vicious again, because then you wouldn't be able to fall asleep or even
Right.
remain sleeping. So you will not, compensate on your sleep any longer, and then you are in this constant debt, and it just keeps on accumulating.
It's actually a pretty good it's a pretty good transition, I think, because I did want to spend time, and selfishly, sleep is an area that I'm always struggling with. So I would love to unpack. I see a lot of your content. There's different, 8 tips for stress management for better sleep, or you have different things out there. I wonder if you could walk us through some of your top tips for either stress management or sleep, and things that you
Mhm.
work with clientele to help them, especially because you focus really on, with busy professionals, people who are high performers or high achievers.
Yeah.
So they're not ones to um, slow down, or maybe know how to take their foot off the gas a little bit, and that's what you need to do when you go to sleep. So I'd be interested to hear about those tips, and if you could walk us through some of those sleep suggestions as your prep.
Um, so I would start by explain like a very basic thing about sleep. I think it's very important to understand because it helps a lot afterwards within the tips. So sleep is actually, our body is wired to sleep. Like biologically, we will fall asleep at some point. That's
Sure.
all of the people with insomnia, they will say like, no, it will never happen, but actually it will, because how does it work, right? So ATP, the molecule of the currency of energy, right, that runs in our body, like whenever a new reaction happens. So once this reaction happens, ATP breaks down and the adenosine is being isolated. And then adenosine as a waste product is stored between the cells of our brain. And more of those being accumulated, more tired and accustomed to sleep we feel. So at some point when we're just full of adenosine, then we will just, not dead, but asleep. And then while we are asleep, this adenosine is being cleared out, which means that it's impossible for us to sleep forever. Either at some point we will wake up because there is no more adenosine left in our brain, so we'll have to build it up again. And that's where this like a tricky thing about sleep is that it clears out mostly during the third and the fourth stage of our sleep, so the deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And we do not have the same deep sleep during our cycles throughout the night. So we have more of deep sleep in the beginning of the night, and then towards the end we have more of REM, the rapid eye movement stage, and less of the deep sleep. So you cannot say like, okay, today I got like 1 hour less, and then I can get 1 hour more next day. That's fine. It doesn't work that way. So actually, according to the studies, you need up to 4 days to compensate for 1 hour of lost sleep, which is massive again. So it's like quite a lot of time required. And yes, but the important thing about like to keep in mind whenever you are laying down there in the bed and saying like, oh my God, like the clock is ticking and I have less and less time to sleep. I will have a very, very bad sleep for me. That you will get it. So like you first of all, your body will fall asleep at some point. And okay, maybe now this night is not the night. Maybe you will have it the next night, but actually you just need to accept the situation and you will know that you will at some point get some sleep. So that's like, and this acceptance is quite important and in understanding how your body works. So it's not that it will be like this forever. When you're really tired, you will sleep. Maybe now you're not that tired, so yeah. Of course, breath work is like it's massive. It's extremely important. There are multiple like breath work techniques, like you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7 seconds, and you exhale for 8 seconds, or like 4-4-4. So 4 seconds inhale, 4 seconds hold, and 4 seconds exhale. Like there are different variations of those. There's also like a 5-finger technique with the breath where you say like you inhale, you exhale, you inhale, and then it's and it's like also nice when you're lying down like this and you're doing it. It's also works pretty well. So a lot of things with breath could help you here. And it's really like tiny little things that you can do. You can write down everything that is on your mind before going to bed, so that you avoid your brain going round and round again on if you added everything to your grocery list, or if you finished up your presentation or whatever. So like if you dump it on the paper just before you fall asleep, then potentially like you will not be thinking about it. Creating like positive images, it's also very, very good thing to do before going to sleep, because this actually trains your brain for the dreams that you will have later, for the memories that
Can you give an example of that, of creating positive images? I think that's a really good one there too. There's a couple more I want to circle back on selfishly, but I did want to I was writing notes as you're talking, so I did want to jump in on that. Can you talk about creating the positive images? What does that exercise look like, and can you give an example? I think it'd be a good one.
Yeah. So, for instance, you have like a very bad presentation day, and you missed up on something, and there was this mean colleague of yours that made a very bad comment, and you felt humiliated, and that was a very bad day. And then you lay down in bed and you keep on rolling over, like, and then she said that, and they also that, and then I've
Oh
been
yeah.
fired for sure, fired, and that, like, what, so it's just going on and getting worse and worse in your head. Well, instead of doing this, you can try to be creative and say, okay, actually, the colleague was not there at all. And during the presentation, another colleague went out and bought lots of ice cream. And they brought ice cream, and then we all send her a picture and say, hey, see what you missed. Okay, it's funny, and it's not true. Yeah, like, it is not
Right.
true. It's something that you imagine it, but doing this, it's an exercise. So you do it, you really imagine it, and it's almost like manifesting. It works the same way as manifesting. So it will not change the reality of things. So you might get
Sure.
fired,
Right. You'll sleep better. You'll sleep better though. Ice cream
but
solves
this
everything,
night,
right? So, well,
but at least this night you will fall asleep.
I have to say I've heard of something similar, but that's really creative and a great reminder. I want to share one of the examples. So I used to work. We would do a lot of role playing with like really intense negotiations with people, and when someone would yell or get upset, one of the tools was you slowly do this in your mind. You would slowly turn down, like when you're thinking back on it, you would slowly turn down the volume of their voice. So it's, hey, blah, 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 right? It slowly just goes down as they're
Mhm,
yelling at you and their mouth's still moving. And then what you would slowly do in your mind as you're thinking about it is you would start playing like we in the States we'd call it like, carnival music or like circus music where it's like and you kind of
yeah,
you keep getting it louder and louder as their voice goes down. And then as they're yelling at you, you can't help but laugh. Even when I'm saying it right now, you can't help but smile
mhm,
about it. But you're 100% right. It reframes it. And so when you talked about
mm,
reframing the actual situation, even and changing that the person's not even there, that's a whole nother layer of it. So I think that's a really good practice for people because I do think to your point, people will fester and just go over and over in this negative spiral. And it's like just pattern
mhm.
interrupt, throw something in there, throw some ice cream in there, throw
Yeah.
some circus music. So yeah, you're on to something because I someone much smarter than me wrote a book on it and did a lot of research on it and I read it and it seemed to work. Either that or I'm just just works for me. But um I did want to go back to a couple of things you said because I felt like they were really profound, and I think people really need to grab onto these. One of them was, and I just the 4 hour, or excuse me, 4 days for every 1 hour of bad
Mhm,
sleep. And so,
mm,
a lot of people, if they're sleeping, if 8 hours is a good day and they only slept 4.5 or 5 hours, we're talking it could take 12 days to replenish that. So I think
mhm,
that's a really important thing for people to one, give themselves a little grace if they're feeling off after that, and two, just to understand to protect their sleep and really prioritize these things. So I felt like that was a really good point from like a expectation of like what's going to come out of that sleep,
mhm,
that sleep disturbance, I should say. And the other one you talked about, and I did want to maybe go through them a little bit again, just to give people some actionable things that they could apply. One of them you described sounded to me, at least I've heard it called this, maybe it's just similar, maybe it's the exact same, but was the box breathing where it's
mhm.
like
Yes.
four in, four out, pause for
Mhm,
four out, four in, four out. So the Navy SEALs, I read, you would use that in like combat situations to lower the heart rate. I'm sure other
mhm.
forces do that. Is that something that you see with your clients a lot with the can you kind of explain maybe a little more and like walk through what box breathing would sound like, just for those to walk away with an actionable thing?
The box breathing is like you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then you exhale for 4 seconds. And like that's mainly, and you repeat it for like at least 5 to 10 times. And
Yeah,
the whole purpose of it in general is to refocus, first of all. So by doing this, and specifically by holding your breath, That's where your concentration is really on the breathing, and you cannot rethink of all this anxious thoughts anymore. You will really be focusing on what's happening with your body, first of all. And secondly, it's also creating a bit of like oxygen deprivation for your brain, which makes it like go sleepy, and then potentially you would be like more relaxed. So that's
Mm,
like the whole point of it. And well, what works better for really going to sleep is when you try to have the exhale part like really longer than at least on the inhale. So that's why my first recommendation was on the 3-7-8, because
three,
then the
seven, eight.
8 is like really longer than 3. So you really try to hit that. And the other one is like really even more complex and can feel a bit panicky at first, but you close one of your nostrils like this and you
Mhm.
inhale, and you do the same thing like what we said, either 4-4-4 or 3-7-8, but only with one nostril, and then the other one, and then this creates even more oxygen deprivation, so it's helps you to refocus even more, but also to relax even more. And this one, after, for instance, an intense exercise, when you were doing your hit and you're actually like your heart is pumping like this,
Yeah.
feels very weird. Like you start it and you say, oh my God, there's literally not enough oxygen. But then after a while, you get used to it, and then you're really relaxed. So this helps a lot.
Great. Yeah, no, those are really good tips. And I like, is there any sequence, or is it just like the 5 to 10 times with the hand one? I felt like that was a really good
Yeah.
visual, like inhale, exhale. I felt
Hmm.
like that was a good mental
Hmm.
picture people could apply and try. Is there a certain amount of times they do that, or is, what do you usually recommend?
So with the hand, it's like you at least done it 5 times, right? Because you have 5 fingers, and
Sure.
it was the same with before. So you do it from 5 to 10 times usually, and it's supposed to help. Um, I mean, it's also not a miracle tool, right? And then it depends on the level of your anxiety, but at least 5 to 10. So
Yeah.
if you are doing this exercise, then you have two hands.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, and with, the one of the other questions I wanted to get into a little bit on nutrition, or maybe a little bit if it's either supplementation or things people are taking. So
Mhm.
when we talk about adenosine and adenosine blockers like caffeine, do you have any general rules of thumb for people when they should cut out caffeine? How should they manage it? What does that look like?
Yes. So exactly, caffeine blocks the receptors for adenosine. So it does not mean that adenosine is not being stocked anymore and just floating out there. Well, actually, it means exactly that. So it's floating down there,
Right.
and then it at some point will be packed where it's supposed to be packed, but it's not yet there. So you are building up even more because your body thinks that there is no adenosine reception, but then once caffeine is out, then all of it will just jump in
Jump
all
in.
these liberated cells, and then you're like all of a sudden really down and feeling really really tired. And here what we should keep in mind is that caffeine stays in our system for a very long time.
Mhm.
So if we are talking like 6 hours, after 6 hours, like half of the caffeine is still there for your body. It's huge, but normally like 6 hours, this like half of the portion is still okay for you to go to sleep. But it just imagine this. So your caffeine intake, you had a big cup of coffee of Americano at 5 p.m. and then 6 hours later, when it's 11 p.m., half of this cup of coffee is still affecting your brain. It's just enormous. And we can see people taking coffee even later than that, right? Especially again at work, if you're staying later, so you're just dumping on coffee a lot. So it's not, I don't think you should cut on coffee like at midday. It's potentially not reasonable, and maybe not so many people are really doing it. I myself don't do it, but yeah, just keep in mind the 6 hours rule at least.
Sure.
Of course, people can vary from one to another, and some they have better resistance, some have worse. So of course, it all depends on you. But that's an average research data. So potentially, it will be not so much for you. My husband can take an espresso and then he goes to sleep. But the thing about caffeine is that we think that we fell asleep and everything is fine, but actually it continues disrupting your sleep. So your sleep quality is not the same as it
Right.
could have been if you didn't have your coffee. So you might be sleeping, but actually in the end it's not the same rest and it's not the same recovery. And that's the
Yeah, it's
point.
and I know myself personally, I'm a little more sensitive to caffeine, so I definitely have to cut it out earlier, which is, problematic for me. Sorry about that. And so that's why I kind of wanted to just unpack that a little bit more because everyone does have different ways they metabolize it and different ways it
Mhm.
affects their body. Um, we're kind of I did want to get into conversely, are there any adaptogens or supplements or dietary things you do to change the physiology around sleep to help them maybe relax a little bit sooner or anything that you notice?
Well, I am not very much into supplementation. Um, so this is maybe a thing about me, but ultimately, I do not think you should take any supplements unless they are really recommended by your medical provider
Mhm.
and you have like, certain deficits that are shown and then like they really require help. A lot of the things you can get from the whole foods, and if you are having a balanced nutrition, you normally do not need any additional supplementation. And maybe like if you have seen this post on magnesium, for instance, right? So like we do take magnesium. It's kind of recommended to everyone, and you can hear that almost every woman out there needs to take magnesium. Um, but on the other hand, if you were to have a balanced nutrition, if you were to eat, I don't know, pumpkin seeds, like, for instance, regularly at like a tablespoon per day, for instance, you would have your required dose of magnesium, and everything would be okay as well. And if you're taking a magnesium bath, you're just throwing your money away because it's actually not absorbed through your skin at all. So you don't have any effect, and just relaxing maybe because the bath is nice, whatever there's
Sure.
inside, but magnesium is not really contributing to this at all. So for me, yeah, not really. Like melatonin you can take as a supplement, but if you are struggling with different time zones on an occasional basis, like really if you flying off from US to Europe, and then there's potentially like a difficulty in this time zone change, then yes, like there occasionally. But ultimately, if you even play with your circadian rhythm, if you play with the zeitgebers like your movement, your nutrition, your exposure to light, all of this at some point this really contributes to sleep way more than the supplementation. And it's a lot of placebo effect. And on top, you don't even know what's there in this bottle anyway. So, so
Yeah.
you think it helps, but you don't know, and you cannot even be safe or be sure that it's safe to be taken because of
Yeah,
the
it's a great
supplement.
point because I think at least here in the US, it's very common to just jump in and just buy a supplement and try and see if it works. And a lot of what even we do, with our functional medicine practice here is we really try to just encourage people to slow down, don't spend the money on that, just get some testing and let's make sure you're truly deficient in those micronutrients. And then,
Mm.
at least in the US here, I'm curious in your area how it's regulated because here the regulations are pretty loose. And so it's very tough
Mm.
for a consumer to find a great product out there that they can trust and make sure, it's vetted and that the right amount of the dosage of what they're short in their blood work or in some of their
Mm.
micronutrient analysis that shows that it has to be from a vetted source versus just going online anywhere and buying it with in your country where you are, what is it like for supplementation there? Is it a cultural thing like it is in the US where it's very prevalent and a lot of people are buying it? And then and my second question would be, how is it regulated?
So it's the same. It's not regulated. It's actually a common situation for Europe, for US, for like right now in Indonesia. So even less regulated potentially. But it's really like there is no regulation on supplementation. So anything can be in the bottle. And there were a few funny videos that I stumbled upon on Instagram like very recently. One of the influencers was debunking what's actually in the protein boxes compared to what's written on the protein boxes after they have done like a lab test of the powder. And I mean, like protein, like almost everybody buys protein and adds to their meals. Like this is something that only lazy maybe person doesn't do it nowadays. Like it's really, you can see it everywhere. And if you have an oatmeal, that's for sure you would add a spoon of the protein powder in. Well, after the test, it's shown that like some of the manufacturers, they announce that you have like 20 grams of proteins when you actually get 3. And
Right.
the amount of fats and carbs, it's like skyrocketing. It's like twice or 3 times what's announced on the pack. So like it's just not at all what's written there. So you cannot trust this, and you do not have an equipment at home to test it either. So that's why for me supplementation is a very like gray area.
Right. No, yeah, that's good reason for sure. Um, one of the things, as we were talking earlier, you work with, and we probably both do work with people that are high achievers. They're really focused on having a, optimized life, career. They're go-getters. And I'm just curious about that nutrition perfectionism, excuse me, that strive for perfection. And I believe one of the things you were talking about before we started recording, is it orthorexia, I think? Could you maybe describe that and just kind of talk about how that affects people and what does that mean?
Yeah, so orthorexia is a disorder where we are focusing on eating clean.
Mm,
And it actually was penned like in 1997, I think, something like this, by like a holistic practitioner when he noticed like some of their patients like really focusing on eating super clean. And it can go to the point where you are avoiding entire groups of macronutrients or just products. You stop going out because you know that people will, I don't know, order pizza, and you definitely not touching that. But it can go like really beyond, and you don't buy from certain stores. You only buy from the farms. You only buy like with no pest. So it's really focusing and making your life around food, and then food is no longer just part of it. It's actually like the main focus in the center. And that's where like orthorexia is quite dangerous, because it sounds like you are doing a good thing, right? It sounds like you are being very responsible, you are eating clean. But then if you push this too much, then it stops being healthy. It's
sure.
actually like completely unhealthy. And that's what I was saying about like healthy eating is like it does not look like rocket science or math, or when you're obsessing about something or restriction. And it also doesn't look like perfection. Healthy eating is when food is just there to fill you. Of course, it brings you joy, but it's still just food. It's not used for emotional regulation. You live within the continuum. You try to do the best choices within what you have as a choice. But if the choice is the way it is, then you just go with it, and that's it. And then you move on, and you don't need to think and overthink about it again and again. And with when we talk about like busy people and high achievers specifically, the problem potentially gets when they decide to live a healthy life, and then they decide to do it like this, like any project that they would approach. They're like, okay, now we do it.
Keep it
There is
all.
a timeline. By then, I will just all in. And this usually does not work, because if you try to change your life completely all of a sudden, it's not sustainable. At some point you would crack. So you have to do it step by step, slowly, because you had your eating patterns for such a long time. You cannot expect yourself to readjust in a millisecond just because you decided it. And there is like a very funny metaphor that was presented to me during the studies when, like imagine you telling your brain that now you decide to live a healthy life, and you present it as a project, how you would present it to a CEO, and you say,
Mm,
okay, hey, so I am living a healthy life. I would need this sort of resources. So now we are working out every day. We wake up super early, like at 5 a.m. We are eating only healthy, no more beer in the evening, no more drinks we cut all carbs because that's what, we are supposed to apparently be doing. No more sugar, so no more alcohol, nothing here. And then your brain is like, okay, and we are getting what?
right, right.
By doing all, so I'm doing all of this effort for like what?
Sure.
And you really have to progressively start changing your life. Then you see the outcomes of this change, they motivate you, and they motivate you to do more. And these examples, like when I see clients of mine that do go through this journey, this is the most rewarding ever. I have started with one girl. It's now been like a bit more than a year ago, and she was she was. I mean, she's amazing, fantastic, and she already looked fantastic when she approached me. And she wanted to lose a little bit of weight, which I believe she absolutely didn't have to, but she wanted to. So like, okay, we go on this journey, and we started with adjusting. Like the very first step that we adjusting was her water intake. Only
Sure.
after 1 week after, so it was really like that's the first thing that we approached. She wasn't now drinking enough, so she started drinking more, and then like she immediately saw first results that motivated her to maybe start doing her lunches, her own
Sometimes.
lunches, and not buy lunches at home. And this brought it all. Maybe I can start workout, or and then maybe I could start workout more. Now she runs marathons. Now she's like she feels amazing. She looks amazing, and her lifestyle is nothing like it was before, and it's sustainable because it she got there progressively, and she's motivated not by the end result, like aesthetical end result, but by the way how she feels. She likes the way she does it, and she's not counting calories or anything, and she's not obsessing over like her jean size. It's literally now about her feeling healthy and just happy.
Yeah, I think that's a really, I mean, not only a great point, but a really good story to kind of walk through the steps of how that is applied, because so many people and again, I think they have the best of intentions, but they're very dramatic with it, right? It's Wednesday and they're like, "Hey, I'm starting everything Monday. Like I'm going to get my
Yeah.
new shoes, my workout clothes. I'm going grocery shopping all weekend. I'm going to pre-cook all the food and da 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 da." And then what do they do Friday and Saturday? Like, "Well, I got to go out and party and eat a bunch of junk because everything's starting Monday. It's Monday. It's Monday. It's Monday." And then all of a sudden, all that motivation wears off because it's not really realistic. And it's not, as you're mentioning, a progressive approach. And it's just way too much an overload for the brain, as you were saying, to where it's just, it's again, the key is, it sounds, what I keep hearing the theme is, it's a lifestyle management. So it's a progressive thing. It has to be something you can live with. You can't just live a certain way for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then just the next day this is my new normal starting Monday. This is what we're doing. So I haven't coached people in a little while, but that was definitely something I used to experience a lot, and I would try to talk them back on that for sure. So that's a good one there. I did want to just go through because I think with your experiences, I think what's unique is a lot of the corporate applications. So in like the workplace and things of that nature. Um, can we walk through? I'd like to walk through a couple tips for the busy professional, like what they don't, you're just starting to work with somebody and they're telling you, "And I
Mm.
don't have time," or I can't do this stuff," or "I forget." Like, what are maybe some quick hitter kind of tips if they only have 5 minutes or they only have a short period of time that they could apply and just start building a little bit of momentum in the right direction?
That girl, she was actually like one of the corporate girls, so that's why he like despite all of this, in the end, she ended up doing like way more than initially she thought she could ever fill into her day. So everything is really possible, depends on how you feel about it and if whether it brings you joy or whether you feel it like as an obligation. What I believe is extremely important is that you build up your own routine. So uh, as a body, we we love routine, right? So like a human body loves repetitive stuff, predictable stuff. So like if you know that you have a meal time at a certain point, you will be getting hungry before this time, and then you will potentially feel satisfied, and then like it will be digested properly. Your body is prepared also to receive food, so perfect. Going to sleep at the same moment of time, getting this enough sleep, like really trying to go to sleep always the day before you're supposed to wake up, so
Mhm.
never after midnight. Getting enough hydration. These are like some really like basic stuff that you start to line up, that you know that you drink enough, that you do everything at the same time every single day. And then slowly you also introduce like little tiny actions. And the tiny actions can be, well, depending really like on where your area or problematic area depends on your life, but it can be that you're sitting around all day, right? So it's not that you're running around, but you're actually sitting in front of your computer all day long, and there is no movement, like zero movement that you can do. So what you can do, you can incorporate cough phrases after your lunch. And this is like already a movement, and that helps a lot because what does it do? It our cough muscles are actually very hungry on glucose, so
Mhm.
like they help you to stimulate a bit of a blood circulation there, and it's
Sure.
already something you can do. It costs you nothing. You can do it during the meeting, and that's already something. You can do the breathing exercise as well, like, and that's already helping within your recovery. You can try to get a bit outside at least when you see the sun, so you try to make a break. You set up an alarm and then you get up every hour just to go to pee, for instance, because yes, sometimes you also don't do that. So it
Sure.
really depends on the level of how much of this mindset you have at this moment, and what can be incorporated. So I never start with now you cook all your meals at home, you never order out, you
Right.
just like you have to have this amount of like carbs, this amount of protein. If you don't get that, like forget it, you will never have to your result. No, it's all about the continuum and whatever actions you're actually willing and ready to incorporate. And slowly but surely, like one area after the other, and the one that feels worse, this is the one that you tackle first. If it's sleep, then first starting with going to sleep at the appropriate moment of time and trying to get like at the appropriate amount of sleep, and so on.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's, one of the things I like to say is progress over perfection. So just keep moving forward, keep tackling the next thing because
Mhm.
you're going to have failures, you're going to have bumps, and they're not really failures. They're just outcomes along the way. Like it's a lifestyle. It's not, as long as you're alive, it's not changing. The game isn't over, it's not done. So don't beat yourself up or be so hard on yourself, because that's a big thing I think for a lot of people too, is they get all built up like Monday I'm starting this, Monday I'm starting, or whatever the case is, or I'm going to tackle sleep. And then they have the first night, maybe it doesn't go so well. And then all of a sudden all these negative emotions come, and then it spirals, and they don't try it again for another 6 months. And so it's just, I think the key there is right, sticking with it and just that progress over progression. So,
And
but no, I
also,
know. Oh, go ahead.
also remember that we should never think on like daily basis, but it's more about the average. It's always about the average. So like one a night of a bad sleep will not ruin your whole sleep history. Like one day of a bad eating will not ruin your whole dietary pattern. It's really like on the average. So that works both ways. So if you're starting your diet on Monday and then you'd clean Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then on Thursday you're like, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday you are a full on star because you were restricting yourself, and you say, hey, I deserve it because I was restricting. Well, by the end of the week, guess what? Your average
Right.
is actually way beyond what you were supposed to be doing. So you could have just eaten stable the whole week without feeling deprived, and we would have the same result because that's the average that counts. So that's like in all areas. We should think on averages. One mistake, it's not a mistake, it's always a feedback. It happens for a reason. You just see what triggered it, what happened there, what can I do differently, and you just move on with your life. If nothing happens.
Yeah. No, that's definitely some good nuggets, good tips and takeaways. I know the one that sticks out to me that I'm definitely going to use is next time I have something not so favorable happen, I'm going to picture that person's not there and everyone's eating ice cream. So I'm definitely going to have to reframe that because you can ask my daughters, ice cream solves everything, you know. So, um, but no, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, you know, a lot of your applications out there as far as nutrition, sleep, rest, recovery, all of the above. Just for everybody out there, you know, we're going to have it in the show notes and in a recap, but just tell everybody a little bit out there about your services, where they can find you, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I do a one-to-one coaching, mainly on the nutrition. So it depends on your goal, depending on, it doesn't have to be weight loss, by the way. It can be whatever. It can be, I want to feel better. I want to feel more energized. I want to get more muscle mass, whatever that might be. So that's like on a nutrition level. And then I also do workshops for corporate teams, remotely, but preferably offline. Now that I moved to Bali, this is a little bit more complicated, but
Sure.
still, hope is there. And the workshops can be on anything, like it can be sleep, it can be stress management, it can be nutrition related to, the basics of it, of course, but then a bit of a more practical application for your team and your company.
All right, I appreciate that. Well, thanks again so much for joining us today. A lot of great nuggets, and for everybody out there, be sure to put comments and questions in the show notes or in the episode after, and we'll be sure to get back to you and answer those. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks again, Anna. We'll see you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye bye.